Hey guys, my name is Kamina the Coach. If this is your first time here, I am an education professional who's been working and living abroad for over a decade in my ninth country. I am not a digital nomad or backpacker. So March of 2020, I was forced back into the United States, where I really aggressively started tackling early childhood trauma and trauma related to my adoption. I am a late discovery adoptee and a transracial adoptee. Um, September of 2021, I was lucky enough to be able, 2022, lucky enough to be able to get back overseas. So you will find on this channel a mixture of information about working and living abroad, my experiences and takes on that, and working through adoption and early childhood trauma, and just tips and tricks to make your life better. I would love for people to be able to utilize some of the things I've learned to help them make life better. So this particular video is no advice, but so recently I was interviewed by Damon Davis, who has a podcast called Who Am I Really? About adoptees' search stories and hoping to inspire other adoptees to search for their bio families. And when I first started my coming out of the fog journey, my reunion journey, it was very difficult, honestly, for me to listen to a lot of the podcast, the episodes on his podcast. It was just hard. It was all very new and everything was very triggering. And so, but now, so 2021 was when I did my search, and I'm just better. I'm just in a better space. Healing is a forever journey, and there are peaks and valleys for sure, but in general, I'm okay, and I have faith that I'm going to be okay. Maybe for the first time in my life. So I was interviewed by Damon for his podcast, and we spent so much time talking about my early life, which I regret, because on this channel you can find the story of my early life, and much less time talking about my actual reunion. And if you search my channel, you really can't find anything really talking about all of the reunion. I've done a video about resources for people searching, because it's much more than what you think it is. I've done a lot, videos about the repercussions of searching, and I have this on because even though I'm in my hotel room in Dubai, it's freezing, because it's really hot in the country, so it's freezing everywhere. So that's why I have this on. Anyways, because it just dawned on me how odd it is that I have on workout clothes and a scarf wrapped around me. So we spent so much time, I think we spent 2 hours really, talking about my past life, that we spent very little time talking about my reunion. You won't find any videos on my channel about my reunion, not specifically about like what happened in my reunion. And I think a lot of that was because, it's not just my story, it's our story. And not just our, meaning my biological parents, but also my siblings and my cousins and my aunts and my uncles. It's not just my story, it's our story. And so out of fear of offending anyone or further alienating anyone, I just didn't talk about it very much, because I think that my reaction was probably not what people would have liked my reaction to be. And I didn't want to further jab the knife into the wound. And I think that this is a really common adoptee reaction. We're always so concerned about everybody else's feelings. But the truth is, telling our story is really important for our community. And who's taking care of us? Everybody is attending to the birth mothers and the adoptive families, but who really is taking care of adoptees but adoptees? So that's why I feel compelled to tell this story. So if you are any part of this story and you're watching this video and it makes you feel some kind of way, I implore you to consider the fact that I've been on my own since I was 14. I didn't know that I was half Black until I was 13 or 14, and I didn't know I was adopted until I was 32. I was molested by the brother of the people who the son of the people who adopted me, and they didn't do anything about it. I implore you to consider all those things as I tell this story. If I touch a nerve, if you feel offended, I implore you to take a look at something outside of yourself, because this story, while it may include you, isn't about you. It's about me and my experience and my position in this story, my position in my story. So my name is Kamina, without the coach part, and so I have been working and living abroad for a long time. I was working in Burma, Myanmar, when COVID came around, and the embassy sent out a warning, and they said, if you're going back to the United States, you better go soon, because we're about to close the borders. So I flew back to the United States, March of 2020. Flew back to the United States, and I flew back to the state that I knew best. I'm from Texas, born and raised in Texas, but as an adult, the place I've lived longest was South Carolina, and I thought that, and so I also have not been in contact and connection with my adopted family for over a decade. So I don't really have any connections in the United States other than the people that I served in the military with and the friends I thought that I had that were in South Carolina. Sidebar, if you're working through healing attachment wounds and serious CPTSD, as you start to reevaluate and reposition yourself in the world, you start to kind of clean up the connections that you've had. So I have had a group of friends, well, yeah, they were friends, that were just really, we've been connected for a long time and very much like family, but very much like dysfunctional family. Not really dysfunctional with me, but just also people carrying a lot of trauma and not dealing with it in a very healthy way. So when I do something stupid, it doesn't really seem stupid, because everybody that I'm in contact with would also kind of do stupid stuff like that. And as you move through that healing journey, you find that people in your life, even people that you've been connected to for a long time, have to fall away. And that's kind of what happened when I moved back to South Carolina. So COVID, feeling very isolated, not feeling like I'm connected to any of these people I don't have anything in common with anymore. We've shared time for almost 2 decades, 20 years, but I just don't feel connected to these people anymore, who are doing this very, very much the same things. So very isolated, no real friendship or family circle, as was a lot of people during COVID, for sure, feeling very isolated. Also feeling very overwhelmed because I hadn't been in the United States in a very long time, almost a decade, 7 years or something, like 8 years. I hadn't been in the United States, and in the midst of the most turmoil the United States has seen since I've been alive, the storming of the White House, the protests. Um, it was just so much. I was so overwhelmed and isolated. So no support system, feeling very, very, very alone, feeling a lot of fear and anxiety about being back in the United States in general. I felt very just bad. So many forms of bad. So many different feelings in the spectrum of uncomfortable. Birthdays, holidays, big special days have been a problem for me since losing my adopted family when I was 14. I haven't had a family Thanksgiving or Christmas or birthday since I was 14, so 30 years. And those were always really hard times. And I say was because they're not now, thank God. But were growing up, and I loved working overseas in countries where Christmas wasn't a thing because I didn't have to feel it. It was just horrible, and birthdays as well. So in the past, I've had 3 DUIs, and I'm not a drinker. I'm not. I'm in regular life, I might drink once a month, but I'm not a drinker. But before I'd gone overseas, I'd had 3 DUIs, one on Christmas, one on my birthday, and one when my adopted dad passed away. So big emotional stuff. So while I was in the United States, my birthday was coming, isolated, all these bad feelings, and I had connected with somebody that I was in the military, I was in basic training with. And he was like, yeah, we'd get together for your birthday, blah, blah. And I was getting ready, and I was excited, and in the middle of getting ready, this person stopped answering messages. And so being stood up is a very huge trigger for me. Abandonment issues, obviously. And I was already getting ready. I just continued to get ready and went ahead and went out for my birthday. The sun was still up, and I distinctly remember thinking, wow, the sun is up and I can't feel my lips. So I was really intoxicated. Really intoxicated. And then I tried to drive home, and of course went to jail for DUI in a different county. I apparently missed my exit. It's horrible, really. Almost like a self-destruct button. Like, I don't want to do this. And sidebar, I've definitely done videos about working and living abroad, that wherever you go, there you are. Buddhist premise. I was running from myself. I was running from the pain. And I couldn't run from the pain anymore. I couldn't. COVID had trapped us all. And it was on purpose that the universe said, you will be still in this pain, and that you will face this pain. And it was so painful to realize that even though, and mind you, I've been doing a lot of healing work before then. So by this time, I'm a Reiki practitioner, so I'm an energy healer. I had gone to seminary. I had studied Islam intently. I had done a lot of work, and I had a practice, and I did meditate, and I did exercise, and I did take good care of myself. However, wherever I went, there I hadn't faced the shadows. I hadn't done the shadow work. I was terrified to look, terrified to open the door, but I didn't really know that. It wasn't really conscious. I didn't really consciously know that. I think that when I found out that when I was adopted, so I found out I was adopted at 32, that's really late to find out that you're adopted. when I found out at 32 and tried to search then, didn't really have the technology that we have now and the resources now. When I came up on all those dead ends, I was just so devastated that I had to find a way. So I think one of the really good questions that you can ask yourself is, what if nothing ever changes? What if everything is the way that it is right now? And so that's the way I presented it. Like, I needed to find a way to be peaceful and happy. If nothing ever changed, I was probably never going to find my bio family. And I needed to find a way to have peace knowing that. And I was also in that same state of about having children, because I really wanted to have children. So I was like, I'm not going to find my bio family, I'm not going to have children, and I needed to find a way to make peace with that, but I wasn't really doing a very good job. So after this DUI, I recognized that it's time. It's time to, there's all this DNA stuff out there. I don't even remember exactly what it was that was the real signpost to, like, hey, you need to do this. I Googled something, I'm pretty sure. So anyways, I bought because I found that Gates, I think his name is Gates, the guy who's doing DNA for celebrities, and it started off for African American celebrities, and then he moved into everybody else, and I just found it fascinating. So I bought a family tree DNA kit. Don't do that, by the way. It should be, you should do 23andMe or the other big one, but not Family Tree, because Family Tree is very obscure. And I bought another one that was really obscure as well and demanded my money back. It was really obscure. So you want to do the two big ones, Ancestry and 23andMe. Those are the two where they have the largest pool of people. So unfortunately, I started with Family Tree, which wasn't a good place to start. I started looking online. I think I just, started Googling and ended up running across, watching a lot of YouTube videos about genealogy and stuff like that. Is trying to figure out if I could triangulate with my DNA on my own, and somehow discovered that there's like tons of Facebook groups that will help people search for no cost. They call them search angels. I refuse to call them that. I've not seen any that aren't white women, and I don't like the cape, the savior in the white cape or type feel that search angel gives these people. It is nice what they're doing, but I don't like, oh, you're an angel, you're a savior. I don't like the connotation of that. It makes me feel like those pictures of white people in Africa surrounded by the village children. That's how it makes me feel. So I don't like that term. However, I did find a woman wanting to help me search. Lovely lady, very motherly. That I think that's what I get from most of these people. She was like, Dallas in particular has a very adoption-friendly judge right now. You should just call and see if you can get your records. I think she has an adopted child, or she's a birth mother or something like that. She was like, you should just call and see if you can get your records. I was like, oh my God. So I did. I called and they couldn't find them. So probably my papers were filed in the city where I was raised instead of the city where I was born. However, the woman that I spoke to at the court had the name of a woman who is big there in Texas, especially in the Dallas area. So she helps a lot of Texas Adoptees Search. And she gave me her name and contact information. And lo and behold, she is a very, very talented searcher. Very talented. However, unfortunately, a birth mother. And so when you move through this process and there are other people involved, you get their feedback whether you want it or not. My primary goal for searching, I'm half black and half Sicilian Italian by my DNA, and half Nigerian if you want to get really technical, but how many years have we been out of Africa? You get their perspective, and I never was really interested in my mother. I knew that I was given up for racism. She's Italian. I knew that her family was not going to take a black baby. I knew the story before I knew her, and I wasn't interested in hearing that story, and I wasn't interested in any more racism as a black woman moving through life. I've had enough racism, and I wasn't really interested in her. However, the woman searching felt like I needed to meet her, and you can't tell this story. You don't know. It might not be that. I'm like, yeah, and pigs might fly in an alternate universe. I was like, so she couldn't find my birth. There's some intricacies about my birth father. So really, when I did my DNA with, so eventually I got the money to get an Ancestry DNA kit. And I don't have great matches. I don't have great matches. However, so there's two on my mother's side who showed up real high. Her uncle and her brother, who she's estranged from, all of them. So her uncle and her brother came up really high. And so really, really quickly, the woman, so from sometime in January to April of 2021 is how long it took her, took from the time I decided to search till the time she found my mother. It didn't take long at all. She was like, your mom is one of two people. She was like, this one or this one. I was like, oh, figures that it would be this one. So my mother has a sister, and they're polar opposites. My mother is very by the book. She worked the same job her whole life, retired from this job, has been married to this man forever, versus her sister has been all over the place, been married many times, has been to jail a lot of times. I was like, so we weren't sure which one was my mother, and I was like, it figures it would be this. Thinking that my aunt was my mother. So, reached out on Facebook. No one responded, except for the daughter of the woman I thought was my mother, which is my aunt. So, the daughter of my aunt, I reached out to her, and apparently they had always known and had always kind of intermittently searched for me, and they were very, very elated that I found them. The way that most adoptees say, it was surreal. It was surreal. It's hard now because so much has happened to I don't know, it just wasn't that big of a deal to me, because this isn't who I was looking for. I was looking for my father and his family. I grew up with a white family. I grew up with a white Texas family, racist as they all are, unless they've done the work. And I mean, is what it is. She has a lot of mental health issues. She didn't really want to talk. She's very skittish, happy to find me, but kind of like at arm's length. Her mother was like all over the place. We talked. Her mother doesn't have a problem with talking. Told me, my mother's whole story and from her perspective, because my mother doesn't talk to any of them anymore. So I'm like, oh, so I'm just gonna have to settle for this, because I'm trying to get information about my father from her, because my father is who I'm looking for. So I'm trying to. She doesn't really know much information, knows name or anything like that. So I'm like, ugh. So apparently I have a brother, and my aunt does talk to my brother, so she let my brother know, and my brother let my mom know, and so he knew about me as well. And my aunt gave my brother my contact information. My brother gave my contact information to my mother, and I think it was Easter. I'm pretty sure it was Easter. My mother was on the golf course. How very posh is that? I don't know. I know, it's just, I feel very, it's a real disconnect. They ride Harleys and play golf, and I don't feel connected to that at all. So she's on the golf course. She called me on the golf course, and she couldn't talk because she's on the golf course with her husband and another couple. I'm like, okay, why did you call then? A little offended. She was like, I'm gonna get on a plane and come see you, and her husband wouldn't let her. I'm like, whatever. The only reason I wish that would have happened is because I would like to have seen her physically, so I could see if we like physically had any like small things like the shape of our hands or something, because I don't look like her at all. I don't look like my brother. I don't look like my aunts, my cousins. They're white. I mean, kind of right here, but not much. Yeah, she got my hopes up that she was gonna come. She's like, oh, he says we can't afford it. So you can't afford to come see your daughter, but you can afford to go to the golf course? Exactly. That's, again, why I wasn't really looking for her. And I didn't recognize until right now talking about it that it pissed me off. I'm just like, whatever, lady. And kind of all of them were just sitting around waiting for me to come to them. Why is this my responsibility? You gave me away. Her voice sounded like my mother, who raised me, which was very triggering. She uses a lot of the same isms as my adopted mother, which was triggering. And I behaved like she had always been my mother, and it aggravated me. I was very childlike with her. I haven't been mothered. I've been my own since I was 14. And it's just immediately like I'm 8 years old again. And that also frustrates me, thinking back on it, not being able to be very direct and honest with her. That's why I'm very thankful that I had made videos leading up to this with the messaging that I wanted her to have. And before we talked again, after the golf course, it was a while before we talked again, several days, because she was feeling uncomfortable because she had binged the videos on my channel. So she knew the type of life that I had. She knew my perspective on blackness and racism. So she was a little uncomfortable, right as she should be. And kind of feeling, like she's walking on eggshells. But at the end of the day, it didn't really do any good, because she felt the need to tell me she wasn't racist because they had that one black family that they were friends with. And that's how we justify not being racist. All of our interactions felt unearned mother-daughter interactions. Like, really, like, if you were a fly watching or listening, if you were on the outside looking in, it seemed very mother-daughter. Yes. But afterwards, I always felt very cringy. Like, this isn't It didn't feel forced. It felt supernatural, but it also felt wrong. Wrong. You birthed me, but you're not my mother. And nothing about me is a result of you. Nothing. We're nothing alike. She was weak and dependent, relatively uneducated, relatively untraveled. We have nothing in common but DNA. Nothing. Nothing. And it's just, it feels, as I look back on it now, very inauthentic. But it was really weird. The racism bit, the microaggressions that they're not even aware of because no one has forced them to look at that stuff. My bio brother telling me that he had been raped by 8 black men. I'm like, why do you need to tell me they're black though? It was just too much for me. It was too much for me, and I was seeing somebody at the time, and I was like, I'm not comfortable with this. And we were talking often. It was just too much. It was too much. And in the process of me trying to figure out how to stop this, I'm doing videos on the channel and stuff. I took a day off, or maybe 2 days off from talking to them, because we're talking all the time. It's too much. All the time. She blocked me, and the brother blocked me. And it was a blessing in disguise, because I was trying to figure out how to do it myself. So there you go. Luckily, before any of this happened, she was like, do you have any questions for me? I was like, I want to know my story. So apparently she told me that my dad was a drill sergeant in the Marines. She had gone to stay with her sister, trying to escape her controlling family, I guess, and really looking to be rescued. I know how that goes. Looking to be rescued, and she thought this guy was going to rescue her. She also thought he was married, and he was never married. I'm not sure which one of the women he was with at the time, but he wasn't married. He was never married. And look, I guess because he was in the military, she thought he was going to take care of her. When she got pregnant, she said that he was violent with her when she told him. Doesn't surprise me looking at his record. He doesn't have a great record. The person who helped me search, when I looked at his record, so before I found him, I had seen his record. And let me back up a little bit. So the woman searcher, she was like, oh, if you look for racism, you'll find it.